Thank you, gentlemen. This is rumor control. Here are the facts.
Short intro. There you go. See, I am Mr. Efficiency today. Before we get started, I want to make sure you guys already know that I did an interview, a talk with George Gammon about 2 days ago on his channel. I will post the link to it in the description below, so you guys can go have a look at that. It was about a 2-hour long talk, and man, it was that I've not to pat myself on the back too much, but I think it was a pretty good talk. It's certainly one of my favorites thus far in 2021. So be sure you go and check that out. Also, Rational Male Religion is available on Amazon, as you can see right there. And it's available on Amazon, it's available on Kindle, and it's available in print. The Audible version is just about done. I know that Sam Bada, my reader, is working on it diligently right now, so please bear with us for the time being. It's a 400-page book, so it's a fairly long read for Sam. So that said, I want to jump into today's topic. I know a lot of people have, here's today's topic, right? I know a lot of people have been talking about the Lolo Jones story, because Lolo Jones is 38 years old. If you are unfamiliar with Lolo, she is a nice, good Christian girl, and she is 38 now. She is a former U.S. Olympic track runner, I believe. I don't know if she ever medaled. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've actually kept track of Lolo. And she was also on the U.S. bobsled team, if I'm not mistaken, because they need good, fast runners. And that's what she is. Very athletic, very good looking girl. As far as on the TOMASSI scale, I've said she's about a good 7.5, somewhere around there. And even at 38, she's still a good looking girl. So why is she in the news right now? Well, we need to rewind the tape here. Now, before I get too deep into it here, I know that there have been some other guys, like I know Joker from Better Bachelor has already talked about this. I think maybe even Donovan Sharp's already sort of touched on the Lolo Jones thing. The only reason I'm not trying to flex on anybody, I'm not trying to put anybody on blast or anything like that, but I do have my own take on this. And the reason why I do have my own take on this is because way back, let's rewind the tape, all the way back to 2012, I wrote about Lolo Jones on the Rational Male. So here's your insert the joke about how there's always an essay for every topic that has ever existed on the Rational Male. So yes, I have actually written directly about her, but this was back in 2012. So we're looking at 9 years ago, just about. And the reason why she was in the news back then was because she was 29 years old. And of course, that's the beginning of the epiphany phase, as most of you are probably aware of if you've read my first or second book. And so she kind of popped up on my radar, and nice enough girl. I mean, I thought, wow. I mean, remember, this is 2012. Okay. This is almost a decade ago. And I wrote a full essay about this, blog post, essay, whatever you want to call, article about Lolo Jones. Now, the reason why I used her as the example was because she was a very good example of what I was sort of delving into at that time, called the adolescent social skill set. And I have become a little bit more sensitive to that concept recently. As a result of being on the Fresh Fit podcast, talking to women who are between the ages of 18 and 38. So you're looking at a 20-year span right there, and even a little bit older than that. So I think the oldest woman that I have encountered on that show when I was out there in Miami was 37 or 38. I'm not really sure, but close enough. Okay. So we've got Lolo Jones at 38 years old, who is now in the news again. And like, you can go ahead and have a look at, like, and if you're, I'll give you a plug, go look at Joker's on Better Bachelor, his take on this. Now, the reason why I wanted to dig into this is because I think we're kind of getting lost in the weeds with this one. We are so sensitive to wanting to put women on blast or hold them accountable that when we see a woman who is the age of, say, Lolo Jones, who's 38, going on 39, actually going on 12, we have to look at the circumstances that sort of brought her to where she is right now. It is far too easy for us to say, well, she's just the product of this age of women being entitled in this hubristic, want for the best of the best, and she's just too picky, and she just can't find the right guy. Well, no, that's not actually why. Not in her case. Simply put, she has decided that she wanted to be, she's an evangelical Christian, right? She decided that she wanted to save herself for marriage. Is that not the commendable thing that we keep talking about? Is that not what tradcons want? Is that not what everyone says? Oh, I don't want a woman who's all ran through. Okay, she's not run through. I mean, according to at least popular opinion anyways. She's still at 37 or 38. She was interviewed saying that she was still a virgin. Well, if that's the case, it's not necessarily so much a picky thing. It's like, where are all the guys who keep saying that they want some like virgin bride? Here she is. She's 37. She's 38 years old. Why? Where are you? Well, what are you doing? Now, I'm not putting anybody on blast in this particular episode, but we need to rewind the tape here. So we're going to go back to my essay, and I'm going to put this back up on the screen here. I'll come back up. And this is called The Adolescent Social Skill Set. And I wrote this like July 9th, 2012. And there's our good girl, Lolo Jones, as you can see, because I used her same picture for the thumbnail for this one. Okay. I'm not going to get, I was just kind of being a little jovial, I guess, here in the beginning here. Unfortunately, the games. Okay, so I was talking about like the Olympic Games and everything that was going on right here. So it was with a bit of non-Olympic interest that I became peripherally aware of the Lolo Jones story. Okay, I had a friend. I think he's still around. This guy Grit Artesian. He wrote a really good breakdown about this during that time. Now, people were making a big deal out of Lolo Jones then because she had decided that she was going to be a virgin. She and Tim Tebow at that time were both kind of the poster children for being the good Christian, good evangelical. We've made the right decisions to, reserve our sexuality for our husbands and our wives for later on in life. Now, remember, at the time of this writing, Lolo Jones is 29 years old. I don't know exactly how old Tim Tebow was back then. However, they are most definitely in their 20s, and they're definitely even Lolo Jones was just on this side of 30. So now she's just this side of 40, and things have changed a bit. So Grit Artesian had a pretty good breakdown about our newest American feel-good Olympic hopeful. Win or lose, expect her to see more of her plastered on a lot of sportswear, cereal boxes, and energy drinks advertising for the next 8 months. She also did at this time in 2012, and again, one of the reasons why I said she's a solid HB7, she was doing some cover shots for Outside Magazine and maybe even Runner Magazine at that time. There was it was interesting to me anyways, because she was doing a lot of these kind of sexy photos in swimsuits or in like track outfits and stuff. I mean, she's in good shape. She's, okay. But I thought it was kind of interesting that was something that she, advertising herself sexually, but yet she was reserving herself, let's just say, reserving her virginity for her husband, which, okay, if that's your thing, that should be the honorable way of thinking about all of this good stuff. Okay, so before you get the wrong impression, my intent in beginning this post off by drawing attention to Lolo isn't to eviscerate her. I actually kind of like her. I actually still do kind of like her. Minus the man jaw. She's a solid HB 7.5 on the rigorous TOMASSI scale, mainly because she's got the athletic appeal that I like, but she also seems genuinely likable. Even today, she still seems like, poor girl. You're kind of caught in the gears of, the girls you're going to probably see on Fresh and Fit, right? You're going to see the girls who we are now holding accountable for not doing what Lolo Jones has done for most of her, well, for all of her life, in fact. If she is, in fact, a 37, 38, 39, whatever year old virgin, should she not be the girl that we are praising and holding up as a beacon of hope in 2021? So anyways, I use Lolo because she's a prime example of a socialization based on what I've called the adolescent social skill set. Okay. Now this was from Grit's post. He wrote this. He said, she considers her virginity a gift. Shock. That she wants to give her husband. She thinks it's the hardest thing she's ever done in her life, harder than college or training for the Olympics. She also realizes and acknowledges the past temptation and opportunities that she could have had sex. Okay. I think it's also important to note that in a feminine-centric media, they've used a 29-year-old Lolo's virgin status not only as a rallying cry for evangelically defined abstinence, but also as the typical and convenient male sexual response shaming device it loves so much. Okay, track and field fans or not, all women can lament in chorus with poor Lolo's quest to find the right guy. Certified trademark, registered trademark, amongst so many of the immature and uncontrollable sexually concerned boy men. It was on Twitter earlier this year. Now, again, I'm going back to Grit's post here. I'm quoting him. Earlier this year, where she first announced to her almost 55,000 fans on Twitter, she's probably got quite a bit more now. We're about 10 years later. She also said on the program that she has grown accustomed to being rejected by men as a result of her beliefs. Remember, this is 2012. This is a 29-year-old Lolo Jones. This is not the 38-year-old Lolo Jones who is bemoaning the same thing on Yahoo News and some other Vice and some of these other posts I'm going to get to as well. Okay, she said, here's the two things that happen. When you tell a guy you're a virgin, this is the honest truth. One, you tell them and they say, oh, okay, I respect that. But you can already see in their eyes that they're what they're thinking. She's lying about this, capping, right? And I'll crack it. So we'll talk. Who says that? So we'll talk usually 1 to 3 months later. And then they're like, oh, shoot, she was serious. Time for me to exit. So what she's saying is that the guys who are interested in her they're only interested in men, only are interested in one thing, and it's disgusting. It's sex. Right? Okay, so I can't imagine shots like that. Okay, so I put some links in there to some of the shots of her being in Outside magazine and everything else. Okay, so I want to dig in. I'm gonna push through just a little bit further here because I'm gonna link this article, this very old article now. So whether that person is Lolo Jones or Tim Tebow, the latent purpose of a vow of chastity made in a person's adolescence is an effort to curb the long-term consequences of the action that a volatile chemical cocktail of pubescent hormones prompt in them. There's a mouthful. Sorry. This decision is couched in whatever moralism helps them and their parents sleep better at night, but it doesn't offer much in the way of educating a 15-year-old promised virgin to understand the social implications of that promise when she reaches 30 and is still a virgin. Okay, now she's 38 and still a virgin. Again, I'm not coming down on her decision to stay that way. What I am looking at here is why that is a decision for her in the first place, or why it's a decision for a lot of people in the first place. Again, I'm not trying to make a case. Actually, let me pull back out of here real quick, guys. My bad. I'm gonna pull that out. There we go. I'm not trying to make a case against staying a virgin. If that's your religious beliefs, I'm not gonna crap all over that. That's on you. You guys can decide whatever it is that you want to do. One of the things that brought me to writing this article was that it prompted a sort of a thought, I guess, about how we go from maturing from a sort of adolescent social skill set into an adult social skill set. And now in 2021, it's much more pronounced, I think, than it was in 2012. And that's what I was kind of picking away at in that article. it wasn't so much that she decided that it wasn't so much a thing about her being this sort of Pollyanna naive little girl who's just like, oh, I'm just going to save myself for marriage. I mean, today she's an outlier. And yet here she is at 38 years old, and we're saying, oh, well, it's just because she's too picky. She wants a guy that is too tall, too short, too fat, whatever. He doesn't make enough money. He makes too much money. There's the common understanding or common observation is that women are too selective. And the reason why she's single, the reason why she's still a virgin at 38 years old is because she has such high standards that no one can possibly meet them. And even the guy who does meet one standard, like in spades, is also deficient in some other standard that doesn't make him absolutely perfect. So are women just children, right? Are women just not mature enough to really accept and to live within this new world order where they are provided with they're spoiled for choice, right? It's choice addiction. It's the paradox of choice, right? You have too much choice and you don't know what to do with yourself. I don't necessarily think it's that so much as it is we're smack dab in the middle of this experiment of whether or not we are responsible enough or mature, women in particular, are responsible enough to really use or to really responsibly use the power that they are afforded and have been afforded since, say, the sexual revolution. So for the last 60 years or so. And I think we're kind of seeing this come to fruition right now. So when I see an 18-year-old girl or 20-year-old girl in this case on Fresh and Fit who tells me that she has a 15 body count, and then I look at Lolo Jones at 38 years old with a 0 body count, according to her, I have to sort of step back and say, okay, well, who's the one that's more immature and who is the one that is more mature? Who is the one that's living by conviction and who is the one who is also thinks she is living by conviction as well? And it's been said in a number of different circles that women are the the most mature teenager in the house, right? They get up to a point, and I believe there is forget the name of the studies now. I wish I had done my homework a little bit more, but there are degrees of emotional maturity from like a level 1 to a level 6. And I forget who the researchers were doing. I'm sure somebody will inform me in the comments later. But the theory is that women only get up to maybe the 4th or the 5th degrees of emotional maturity, and then they sort of stop right there because they don't have any real incentive or any kind of motivation to mature any further than that because they don't really need to. For instance, men, on the other hand, can get to a state of emotional maturity where we are much more under control of our maturity, and I think that's our control of our emotions, I should say. It can be anyways as a result of sort of learning and training, but it's also because we do not experience emotions and we do not process emotions in the same way that women do innately. So there's got to be that aspect of it as well. Now, this is not going to be a completely let's bash women's emotional maturity episode, because I also happen to think that the ideal of the adolescent social skill set is also applicable to a lot of the Lost Boys generation right now as well. So we get to a point in our maturation and we become retarded. And I mean that in the clinical sense. Your maturity, your social skill set becomes retarded in that you don't you don't have the opportunities, let's say, to get to a point where you are you're prompted to a higher form of maturity or a higher form of social, like your social skill sets do never really sort of break from being the adolescent side of things. Like the adolescent social skill set would be something that you would learn, let's say, in like between the ages of maybe 13 until you're about 18 or maybe even 19. And from that point on, at least certainly in our ancestral past, but not even in our most recent past, a young man was expected to have the maturity to be an adult much earlier than they are today. So when we look at the I'm just using this as a benchmark, so don't throw rocks at me for this, but when you look at the average age of first marriage for men today in the United States, it's 29 years old, almost 29 and a half years old, a little bit more than that. For women, it's 28 and a half years old. In 1965, I believe, 64, 65, the average age of first marriage was right around 22 for a young man and 20 for a woman. And that was normal. That was the average. And so it's not so much well, that should be the benchmark. Marriage shouldn't necessarily be the benchmark of emotional maturity. However, it has been in the past. And assuming and taking adult responsibilities earlier in life was something that we sort of were forced into doing as recently as 50 or 60 years ago. Today, when we complain about young men who are kidults or Peter Pan boys, or guys who are attempting to, let's say, where they're always said, what is it? They're sustaining or maintaining or perpetuating. They're perpetuating their adolescence into their 30s, and that none of the Lost Boys generation are really prepared for adulthood. And in some senses, I guess I can understand why they would say that. And I don't necessarily agree with that. And I have said and written in the past that I don't necessarily agree with that. I just simply think that it's because of the incentives that young men have today in order to mature. For women, on the other hand, they are handed everything from a very early age. They are empowered. They are encouraged. They are emboldened to a degree of hubris that their emotional maturity is not prepared for. So when you've got a 20-year-old girl on Fresh and Fit who tells me that she's got a 15 lay count, and most likely by the time she gets to be even 29 years old, like Lolo was in the original article here, God only knows what her lay count is going to be by then. And yes, your sexual past matters, ladies. I've done episodes of that too. I think I'll tag that onto the end of this video so you guys can understand what I'm saying. Yes, it does make a difference. There is, and it's a big difference. And so along with that should come an emotional maturity that I don't think at least the last two generations have learned or have had the opportunities to learn those things. So you get a generation, at least two, I would argue the millennial generation and Generation Z of young men and young women who are acculturated and socialized behind a screen, behind their smartphones. We have the first generation. I saw a meme not too long ago about the Generation Z being the first generation to be raised on Twitter, to be raised on Twitch, to be raised on YouTube and Instagram, and you name the social media, Facebook, whatever, is the very first generation that has sort of grown up with that. Now they've reached adulthood I'll say as a result, but certainly influenced by social media and a global sexual marketplace. Unfortunately, that limits the opportunities, the real world, in real life, IRL opportunities to develop an adult social skill set. So you've got women who get retarded in their adolescent social skill set that they drag into their adult years. And the same is true, I think, for a lot of men, although I think that young men have more of an opportunity, or simply have more occasion, let's just say, to develop a little bit more than women do, because they are not handed the rewards that women are given in their sexual market value peak years that men are. So men must become, women just are. And if we're saying, ladies, you're perfect the way you are, it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter how you confidence this and hubris that, if you take that and give that to women of the last two generations anyways, you give that to them, you give them default respect, you give them default rewards, you give them default self-confidence and self-esteem that is unearned. They have no motivation and less opportunity to develop from an adolescent social skill set into an adult social skill set. Now, when a woman gets to be in her epiphany phase, that's when she will presume that she is more mature and she is more adult, when in fact she still is clinging to that adolescent social skill set. So when women get upset that they can't find the right guy, or they're going to freeze their eggs, or they become subject to the social conventions that tries to perpetuate their sexual agency that they had when they were 22, 21, 22, 23 years old, and to say it's evergreen. You don't have to worry about it. It's imperishable, ladies. Don't worry. You're perfect the way you are. You don't have to do anything. When you tell generations of women that they're perfect the way they are, they have no occasion to develop anything beyond a adolescent social skill set. As a result, you get a generation after generation of women who get to be 29, 30, 31, even 38 years old, and they're still thinking like they were when they were 18 years old. So that's the difference between the adolescent social skill set and the adult social skill set. And again, it makes me sound like, oh, old man Rollo talking about get off my lawn. That's not where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is, when you are looking for, if you are in the market for a long-term relationship, even if you're in the market for a short-term relationship, you need to understand that the vast majority of women, first of all, are going to be on antidepressants. We've already discussed that in previous shows, but also they're still operating and still bewildered by reality when they get to a certain age and they realize that they are not as desirable at 32 as they were at 22. But when they're still operating from an adolescent social skill set at 32, 33 years old, they don't understand why when Rollo Tomassi or Kevin Samuels or the guys on Fresh and Fit or anybody else in the red pill circles says, ladies, you are not as desirable as you were when you were in your 20s, they think, because they've got an entire gynocentric social order that has been reinforcing the idea that it doesn't matter that men should just be falling at their feet. They're processing that, and they are coming to the conclusions, and they're coming to the ideals that they hold at that particular age as a result of never having matured past the 18-year mark, past the high school years, in how things ought to be for them. So even when women are saying, "Oh, I'm 40 years old and I'm at my sexual peak," no, you're really not. What you are is the victim of social conventions that have taught you that you should be at that point and that men should respond to you at that point, but yet they're not. They're not doing that, because you are also, just as women are in the sexual marketplace, the global sexual marketplace right now, men are also in the global sexual marketplace. So if you've got a woman who is 38 years old and maybe to her credit is still a virgin, she still doesn't understand why she's having so much difficulty in locking down a guy, finding the man that God has ordained for her since birth, or soulmate, why he hasn't just simply arrived at her doorstep right now. Why is that she's shocked and dismayed because she hasn't found the right guy. The Prince Charming hasn't ridden up on his, white stallion shining silver armor. Well, because you're still thinking in terms of how you thought when you were 29, according to the essay that I was writing back then, and most likely when you were 19 years old. A lot of women still today, and this is something you guys can take to the bank now. And I'm not, again, I'm going to make this a little bit. I usually don't. I usually focus on just, on the female side of things. I will focus on the guy side of things, but on the female side right now, gentlemen, when you're dealing with women between the ages of, say, like 18 or 19, all the way up till 28 years old. Tommy Lahiren's perfect example of this, right? 28 years old, just entering into the epiphany phase, is frustrated and angry that she can't find the right guy because she's still stuck in high school in Reseda or wherever the hell she was, Texas. I don't know where the hell she came from. She's still stuck in high school, in the high school mentality, in the adolescent social skill set. So when she's frustrated that she hasn't found what she thought what she deserves, it's because those goals, those ideals, the guy that's going to be the perfect dude for her, is the guy that her 18-year-old social skill set taught her that she deserves. And now Lolo Jones, good example, 38 years old, still frustrated, still confused, still oblivious to the fact that between the age of like 29 and now pretty soon 39, that things have changed. You should have matured. You should have figured this stuff out. It should be obvious to you, painfully obvious to you in some cases. But yet we're going to write article after article about this and at her bewilderment. So when I hear, and just to sum them, put a nice, so let me, actually, before I finish, guys are like this too. So, and I would say in some ways, maybe even worse off, because guys still think in terms of, maybe they're a little bit more down to earth when it comes to the sexual marketplace. It takes longer for men to mature into it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they graduate from an adolescent social skill set into an adult social skill set as a result of that. I think that men are stunted. Generally, young men today are still stunted in that adolescent, that maturation process. Maybe not nearly so much as women, because we simply give women everything, right? It's women just are, men must become. And so as a group, as a demographic of young women, you run into the problem of too much, too young, too fast, right? So they're given too much, they're too young to really interpret it, and they're given it too much too fast. And even the women who are like, you say, well, man, not all women are like, 9s and 10s. Yeah, I know that. But they think that they're 9s and 10s, courtesy of social media, but also courtesy of what the belief sets that they developed when they were adolescents, that they are carrying over into their 20s. For men, it's a little bit different. The expectations might be different. When guys get to a certain, like right now, guys are just simply don't know what to do with themselves. They're purposeless. They're rudderless. Again, it's the Jordan Peterson Lost Boys generation. They don't know what to do with themselves. They lack a purpose more than anything else. Not meaning, not some ephemeral understanding of life, the universe, and everything. They lack purpose and they lack a function. And I think that if you want to see men who have a higher degree of happiness or sense of self, that are much more emotionally healthy, much more intellectually healthy, those are the guys who say, you know what, I know what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. My sense of purpose is, my sense of direction is, at least, if not completely clear, at least I'm going this way instead of that way, or don't just sitting around doing nothing. That I think when it comes to maturation from an adolescent social skill set to an adult social skill set, men have an advantage because we have to have the insight to say, well, that's not working, and we have to experiment with it a little bit more. But I think that when we're talking about the occasion, right, or the opportunity to have the experiences that will develop from an adolescent social skill set into an adult social skill set, men have a much higher advantage, but I don't think that they are. I think they take way more time now than they used to in the past. As I said, you had to grow up quick back in the day, and even in my day, right? But you still had to grow up pretty fast. If you were part of the greatest generation or any generation prior to that, you knew what you had to do. You knew what was expected of you, and you had to grow up really quick because them's the rules. Now we're floundering and not knowing what to do, and as a result, we tend to, like young men of the last two generations, tend to be a little more confused and a little more purposeless because they simply lack the opportunity to develop from that adolescent social skill set into the adult social skill set. So last but not least, how can you use this? How can you progress past this? Well, first off, you have to look for women who have an emotional maturity, which is next to impossible these days, simply because we have an online culture. We have a global culture right now that encourages, zero accountability for women. And so one of the reasons I think that shows like Fresh and Fit or any of these shows that are using this formula, right, which is holding women accountable, putting them on the spot, telling them how it is. The reason why that is so popular right now is because it will almost automatically provoke a reaction in that woman. And why is that? The reason why she's having that reaction is because she's still using an adolescent social skill set. The goals and the ideals that she has at 33, 35, even 38 years old were established when she was 18, when she was 19. And so between those ages, when we're just saying, you go, girl, and it doesn't matter what you do, there is no response. You have a default respect. You should be eminently desired by men no matter what. Your sexuality and your sexual agency is evergreen. It doesn't matter if you're 21, 41, or 71. You're always hot girl, and men should always find you attractive because beauty is just a social convention, right? When you feed generation after generation of women on that, yeah, it's going to be really difficult. So you have to be able to learn what you're dealing, like know who you're dealing with. That's one of the 48 laws of power, right? You know who you're dealing with, but you've also got to figure out, like, how can you leverage that to your best advantage? Most guys simply don't have the patience to do that. I get it. Well, she should just grow up. Okay, well, she's not going to. Or maybe she should, and maybe she just needs to be pushed over the fence, right? Maybe she's almost there. It's up to you to sort of discern that. You're not going to find, guys, you are not going to find the perfect girl. You have to create the perfect girl. You have to build that. Because up until that point, most likely, the woman that you just met is still stuck in an adolescent social skill set. And you need to accept that and work with that and build upon that if that is something you even want to do. So when you guys got the black pill, when you've got the MGTOW, the more extreme ends of the MGTOW, got to clarify that, right? Guys, if it's not worth it to you, try looking at why you think it's not worth it to you. Is it because you simply don't have the emotional maturity to understand this or to use this or to leverage this? Or is it just simply because you're just like done, you're free, forget it, I'm out? So keep that in mind. And I will be back. Actually, I am hosting Rule Zero this Saturday. It will be at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And as I said in the beginning of this show, make sure you go check out George Gammon and the podcast that I did with him back on Monday of this week. I thought it was really, really good. And I got some big news coming very soon. I think I might even announce it at the end of this week. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please just throw them in the commentary, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.